Well, hello, and welcome back to Small Group. First of the year,
2025.
which I always hated when people said when I was in school because you think of years from September till June.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry for that. We have an announcement.
Yes.
Well, it's an announcement we've said before, but we want to make sure we say again.
Yes.
And that is Youthquake. Ooh, Youthquake. You know, let's all go to a giant youth conference in Briarcrest, which is a college I went to and got my degree from, including Lee, including Bree, I think even. Many people have been to Briarcrest. Oh, yeah, there's going to be music and speakers. It's going to be so fun.
Why are you hyping it up? You're so mean.
We can't go. It's sold out in the first 38 hours, which has never happened ever in the history of Youthquake, and they're not even really sure what happened. And so because it's sold out within the first 38 hours, there's no tickets for us to buy to go.
So that's that.
So that is canceled. So if you were looking forward to that, I'm very sorry. There's literally nothing I can do. So don't blame me. Blame the building that Youthquake would have been in, because
That's what limited
not
it.
enough spaces.
But we have good news because we just learned something this weekend. And that is that a youth conference retreat thing that used to happen in Kelowna is actually starting up again this year. And it's called Rush. And if you have older siblings who've already graduated, I bet you've heard of it because some of them used to go to it. We used to go every year. And so this is the first year in like the last 5 years that they're doing it. And we are going to go. And so it's coming up, though, February 14th and 15th.
Yep.
So that's a Friday and Saturday. It's Friday night. We would leave the church at 5 o'clock on a bus.
Altogether.
Yeah, on a bus. And then we'd come back. We'd be back at the church by 10. And then off again in the morning and back again late that night. And so the cost for this is $90 to come if you register by the end of January.
Yep.
Otherwise, the cost goes up $20.
Yep.
So we're going to need you guys to remind your parents to check their emails and to click on those links. They actually have to do 2 registrations because one is through Willow Park that's hosting the conference, their registration, and then our registration where we can pay for the bus and make sure we know that you're coming. So we're excited. It's going to be a fun time listening to speakers, hanging out. There's like an amazing race game on the Saturday afternoon. There's a DJ and a dance party on Friday night, apparently, which don't worry if you are like, I don't want that.
I'm not dancing.
Yeah, Aiden can stand with you and observe all the other people dancing.
And be like, look at these idiots.
Wow, that's a little harsh.
That's what I did.
But
I only went to one school dance, and that's what I did. I stood on the outside, and I went, this is dumb.
Very sad. Anyways.
I wasn't sad.
The point is we're excited, and so we want you guys to be excited.
Yeah.
And so get signed up. We have your leaders. A bunch of them are joining us, and so it's going to be a really good time.
Do it quick, though, because it's next month.
Yeah. Otherwise, you got to pay more money.
Yep.
Okay. This week, we're diving back into the book of Mark, and this chapter 7, has some really interesting stories. And so, coming up with how to talk about it, questions to ask. It took actually a lot of digging for me this time, but it was fun. And so I hope you guys have great discussion. And as you talk about, essentially the thing we want you to be thinking about is how Jesus is expanding the welcome circle with who is allowed to be considered God's people. And so in order to kick off that thought, there's also a lot of talk about the law and traditions and that kind of stuff. So you guys are going to watch the Bible Project video about the law.
You're most likely familiar with the 10 Commandments in the Bible, stuff we generally take as good advice. Don't murder, don't steal, honor your parents, the list goes on.
And those are just the first 10. There are actually a total of 613 commands, all given to ancient Israel, found in the first 5 books of the Bible, which in Hebrew are called the Torah.
Now, the word Torah is usually translated in English as the law, because it has all of these laws in it. And as you read through them, you wonder, am I supposed to obey some of these, all of these? I mean, what's the purpose of the law?
Well, that translation is kind of confusing because while the Torah has laws in it, the book itself is fundamentally a story about how God is creating new kinds of people who are fully able to love God and love others. And when Jesus taught about the Torah, he said that he was bringing that story to its fulfillment.
So walk me through the story and how it's fulfilled.
So the story begins with God creating humanity who rebels. And God chooses Abraham to bless all of the nations through his family. who end up in slavery down in Egypt, and so God rescues them. Then at Mount Sinai, God makes a covenant with Israel, like an agreement. And all of the laws that Moses gives to Israel are the terms of that agreement. They're like a constitution. And so some of the laws, they're about rituals and customs that set Israel apart from the nations. Other laws are about social justice or morality. And by following these, Israel would show the other nations what God is like.
Okay, so the rest of the Torah is just the complete list of laws that Moses gives Israel?
No, the rest of the Torah just continues the story. And the 613 commands are only a selection from that original constitution. And even these have been broken up and placed at strategic points within the story. Now pay attention, because you'll see a really clear pattern. Moses gives the first laws to Israel.
Yeah, don't worship other gods, don't make idols.
And then right after that, there's a story of Israel breaking those very laws.
Yeah, they worship the golden calf.
And so Moses gives some more laws, and then you get more stories of rebellion. Some more laws, rebellion again, some more laws, more rebellion, and you start to see the point.
Right, no matter how many laws, they're just going to continue to rebel.
So at the conclusion of the Torah's story, Moses gives this final speech to Israel as they prepare to go into their new home. And he tells them, you guys, I know that you're not going to follow all of God's laws. You've proven to me that you're incapable. And Moses says the problem is that their hearts are hard and that they're going to need new, transformed hearts if they're ever going to truly follow God's law. And he was right. I mean, the story goes on to recount Israel's total failure.
They go into the land, they break all the laws.
Right. Now, the next section of books in the Jewish tradition are the 15 books of the prophets, and they reflect back on the story. For example, Ezekiel, he said that if Israel was ever going to obey the law, God's Spirit would have to transform their hard hearts into soft hearts. And Jeremiah said that's when obedience to God's commands wouldn't feel like a duty, but they would be written deep in their hearts. And Isaiah, he promised a future leader, Israel's Messiah, who will lead all of the people in obedience to the law. Now, in Jewish tradition, all of these books together are called the prophets, even the historical books, because they're continuing the story told from the perspective of the prophets.
Okay, so we have the law and the prophets, and they're telling one connected story about God's desire to bless the whole world through a people, Israel, who it turns out needs a new heart.
Yes, and Jesus saw himself as continuing that story. So he agreed with the law and the prophets when he taught that it's out of the human heart that come the most ugly parts of human nature. It's like the default setting of our hearts is opposed to God's law. But Jesus also said that he came to solve that problem, and in his words, to fulfill the law.
So what does he mean there, to fulfill the law?
Well, first he said that the demand of all of the laws in the Torah could be fulfilled by what he called the Great Command, that we are to love God and to love others.
So that seems pretty easy. I mean, we all want to love.
Well, we think we want to love. But Jesus showed how love is far more demanding than we realize. So he quotes the law, do not murder. And he says, yes, not killing someone is a very loving thing to do. But then he also says that when you treat someone with disrespect or when you nurse resentment against them, you're also violating God's moral ideal because you're not treating that person with love. And so Jesus said true love ought to extend even to our own enemies. So even though this command seems very simple, Jesus showed how our hearts are not currently equipped to fulfill even this basic command of God to love others.
And that's kind of a downer.
But where Israel failed, Jesus brought this story to its fulfillment. As Israel's Messiah, he fully loved God and others, and he showed all of the nations what God is truly like. He did this through his acts of compassion and mercy, and ultimately by loving his enemies even unto death. And after his resurrection, he told his followers that he would send God's Spirit to transform their hearts so that they could follow him and fulfill the purpose of the law, to love God and to love their neighbor. So this fulfills the story of the law and the prophets, or in the words of the Apostle Paul, the one who loves fulfills the law